making a big change in your company, like a merger or a digital transformation, or maybe some other large change that is going to affect most of your employees, big change, just change in general, really can rattle people, especially with what we've been through for the last year. And so it's important to know going into this process that while a culture assessment or a change readiness assessment seems like a really good idea, there's some very important keys to getting it right. I'm going to talk about 4 of them in this video today. Hi, I'm Lisa Jackson with Culture Pros. I have been helping companies for 23 years lead culture change initiatives, both in terms of architecting them as well as scaling for implementation. So it's probably fair to say that just about anything that could go wrong with culture assessment, I've seen it, as well as a lot that can go right. So let's dive in. Key number 1, know your why. So between the executive team and the HR leadership in an organization, there's often different reasons for undertaking a cultural assessment. So those can vary from anything from just getting a pulse check on how people are feeling, all the way to a formal assessment that might really unearth the indicators of high performance in an organization. We've used the Denison for years for that exact purpose, so that you can link culture behaviors to high performance and everything in between. So it's important that you have alignment between HR and the C-level as going into the assessment about the goals of what you're wanting to create from it. So speak with the end in mind and look for whether or not 2 companies will mesh, such as in a merger or acquisition, identifying resistance to change and pockets of where that's going to show up, understanding where trust issues exist in your organization. Maybe you're revamping specific people practices like performance management, as an example, or work from home policies. So whatever the case is, just be sure that you're aligned at the outset and don't bite off more than you can chew with this, because it can really get pretty unwieldy pretty quickly. The bottom line with culture assessment is that you're planting seeds for growth. You want to make sure that they're in healthy soil, which is a metaphor that often leaders ignore. You want actionable insights to come from this, not just information, and you want to collect diversity of thought and opinion across the organization that really strengthens your plans and your buy-in to change. So those should be all really important purpose statements to start with. Tip number 2 is inclusive design. Create a small team to help shape the how. The key here is to choose people who are trusted and have status as influencers in the organization already. This can be tricky. Without being self-serving, I think probably that's the reason why we have been tapped so many times over the last 20 plus years to do this work, because somehow we're seen as more neutral. But the number 1 question that we get asked in any cultural assessment from the people that we're conversing with, whether it's through focus groups or interviews, is this really anonymous? I don't really trust this is anonymous. And that can be strong if the trust level in your organization is weak. So be aware that having an internal team is going to help you offset some of that. Don't just choose a business consultant that's going to come in and lead that effort without making sure that you've got a good team internally to support it as well, and not have it just be HR. Make sure that it's people from the business. It's truly more about how people feel about the process that is going to give you the highest result for this, rather than perfect survey design. Okay. Tip number 3, qualitative versus quantitative. So people are being surveyed to death in this day and age, and I hear that a lot. Survey fatigue is a very real thing. So making sure that you're not repeating what other surveys are going to feel like to people. So they may be completely different in your mind, but that's a very important thing to get right, is making sure that you're not just asking a bunch of multiple choice, scale of 1 to 5 kind of questions, but that you're including qualitative data, which is focus groups and interviews are the 2 biggest categories that we work with when we're helping a client construct a culture assessment. And they should really be part of any true cultural assessment, because otherwise it is just a survey. You're looking for the anthropological truth of what is going on in your organization, and unearthing that is actually best done in some cases with external eyes and ears, depending on your goals. But also, if you're using just internal people to do it, you're going to have to be super careful about how you design the qualitative part of it. Again, going back to knowing your trust level, will people be honest, or will they be afraid that who's conducting the assessment is going to have a little bit more of allegiance to the leadership team, and that can, it can really influence what people tell you and what they won't tell you, more importantly. So tip number 4, communicate, 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 and then communicate some more. Far too many assessments and surveys are really only seen and reviewed at the C-suite level, or maybe 1 or 2 layers down. Very important to make sure that you design in this process, because it's culture. People are so excited and they want to know, so that you design ahead of time the way that you're going to cascade the communication throughout the organization. Otherwise, you leave people feeling like, why did I waste my time? What did leaders learn from this? And what will they say or do with this information? And that can create a bit of a trust gap, sort of like if you put a quarter in the vending machine and hit the button for your favorite drink or snack and nothing comes out. You're going to be a lot less likely to return to that vending machine. So just be aware that the communication process needs to be built in. Not sharing also creates a really big opportunity. People don't get on board for big change easily. So what you're doing with each step of this process is designing the intervention itself, rather than having it just be, oh, we're going to assess and then we'll figure out what to do. Okay, so there's 4 tips for creating a great cultural assessment. I hope you've gotten a good nugget or 2 from today. Tip number 1, know your why. Tip number 2, create inclusivity in design. Tip number 3, make sure you're getting qualitative versus just quantitative data. And tip number 4, communicate, communicate, communicate to build trust. Thanks for listening today. Please give it a like if you've enjoyed this video, and subscribe for more videos on leading great change.